Hi guys, imagine a world more alien and unexplored than the dark side of the moon, right here on our own planet. For centuries, the deep ocean was a pitch-black realm of terrifying myths and crushing pressure, completely off limits to humanity. But one visionary inventor decided that we belong down there, creating the very technology that allowed us to breathe underwater and completely changing how we view the blue heart of Earth. This is the incredible story of Jacques Cousteau, the man who unlocked the deep. But before we begin, for those who enjoy slow, thoughtful stories about legendary figures, hit like, subscribe and share in the comments which personality or historical figure you'd like me to cover next. And tell me, where are you watching from? I'm always curious to see the different places my viewers are from. Born in 1910 in a small town in France, young Jacques was drawn to the water almost from the moment he could walk, finding a strange comfort in the silence beneath the surface. As a boy, he suffered from stomach issues and anemia, so his doctors recommended swimming to build his strength, unintentionally launching the career of the greatest ocean explorer in history. His family moved to the United States for a brief period when he was young, where he learned to speak fluent English and spent his summers diving in the lakes of Vermont. It was during these formative years that he bought his first mechanical movie camera, taking it apart and putting it back together just to understand how it worked, sparking a lifelong obsession with capturing life through a lens. Returning to France, he joined the French Naval Academy in 1930, dreaming of becoming a pilot, but a devastating car accident shattered his right arm, ending his aviation dreams forever. During his painful rehabilitation, a fellow naval officer named Philippe Taillier gave him a pair of underwater goggles, a rare novelty at the time. When Cousteau put them on and dipped his face into the Mediterranean Sea, his life changed in an instant. He saw a vibrant, bustling ecosystem hidden just below the waves, a silent world that demanded to be explored, but he was frustrated by how little time he could spend down there on a single breath. The ocean was calling to him, but the limits of human lungs were holding him back, setting the stage for an incredible revolution. The crushing limitation Cousteau faced was time. The existing diving technology of the early 20th century was clumsy, heavy, and dangerous. Divers wore massive copper helmets and canvas suits, tethered to the surface by thick air hoses, walking blindly on the muddy bottom, while relying completely on a crew above to pump them air. There was no freedom, no grace, and certainly no exploration of the midwater realm. Cousteau experimented with primitive rebreathers that recycled pure oxygen, but these were treacherous. Breathing pure oxygen below 30 feet often led to convulsions and drowning. He knew the solution had to involve compressed air, but the missing piece was a reliable way to regulate the flow, delivering air automatically at exactly the right pressure for the diver's depth. The breakthrough came during the darkest days of World War II. Cousteau was introduced to Émile Gagnon, a brilliant Parisian engineer who specialized in industrial gas valves. At the time, fuel was scarce in occupied France, and Gagnon was working on a demand valve to feed cooking gas into car engines. Cousteau immediately recognized that this mechanism, with modifications, could be the key to unlocking the deep. Working in secrecy to avoid detection by the German authorities, Cousteau and Gagnon collaborated on adapting the valve for breathing. In the winter of 1943, they tested the first prototype in the cold waters of the Marne River near Paris. It was a failure. The regulator worked when the diver was oriented one way, but would free flow or restrict air when they turned over. A crucial redesign followed, aligning the inlet and exhaust at the same level. Then came the historic moment on the French Riviera later that year. Strap on the twin cylinders and clamping the rubber mouthpiece between his teeth, Cousteau submerged into the Mediterranean. He took a breath, and then another. The air flowed naturally, effortlessly, matching his demands exactly. For the first time, a human was swimming completely untethered, gliding through the water with the horizontal freedom of a fish, unburdened by surface connections. They called their revolutionary invention the Aqua-Lung. This wasn't just a new piece of equipment, it was the birth of scuba diving as we know it, a device that liberated humanity from terrestrial constraints and opened 99% of the living space on Earth for exploration. And Cousteau had just become its first true citizen. With the war finally coming to a close, Cousteau found himself in a unique position to utilize his groundbreaking invention for something far greater than military applications. He successfully convinced the French Navy to establish the Undersea Research Group, a specialized unit dedicated to clearing submerged hazards and exploring the deep. Utilizing the newly minted Aqua-Lung, his team initially undertook complex missions to locate and dismantle leftover naval mines, a demanding task that proved the immense practical value of untethered diving. But Cousteau's true passion was not merely clearing waterways. He yearned to document the biological wonders he was witnessing firsthand and share them with the public. He realized he needed a dedicated vessel, a mobile floating laboratory that could take him, his equipment, and his crew across the global oceans. The perfect answer came in the form of a former British Royal Navy minesweeper named Calypso, originally built in the United States and entirely constructed of wood. In 1950, a wealthy British philanthropist named Thomas Lowell Guinness purchased the ship and generously offered it to Cousteau under a legendary arrangement, a lease of exactly 1 symbolic franc per year. Cousteau immediately set to work transforming the sturdy wooden vessel into a state-of-the-art oceanographic research ship. He completely stripped out the old military gear and installed a specialized diving well, fully equipped scientific laboratories, and an innovative underwater observation chamber right in the bow, located 10 feet below the waterline. This unique structural feature allowed crew members to watch and film marine life continuously, even while the ship was actively moving. Calypso became much more than just a functional boat. It transformed into a global icon of exploration, an instantly recognizable symbol of humanity's quest to understand the seas. Equipped with underwater scooters, advanced camera gear, and an incredibly dedicated crew of scientists and divers, Cousteau was finally ready to embark on his lifelong mission to take the entire world on an unprecedented journey into the blue unknown. With Calypso fully operational, Cousteau embarked on ambitious expeditions across the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, determined to share the mesmerizing beauty of the abyss with a terrestrial audience that had never seen it. In 1953, he published a groundbreaking book titled The Silent World, co-authored with Frederick Dumas, which chronicled their pioneering dives and breathtaking encounters with marine life using the newly invented Aqua-Lung. The book was a massive international success, selling millions of copies, but Cousteau knew that words alone could not capture the vibrant colours and dynamic motion of the ocean floor. He realised that the true power of his message lay in visual storytelling, so he turned his attention to creating a full-length documentary film. Teaming up with a young French director named Louis Malle, Cousteau spent 2 years capturing unprecedented footage of coral reefs, ancient shipwrecks, and complex aquatic ecosystems. The sheer logistical challenge of filming underwater in the 1950s was staggering, requiring them to design their own waterproof camera housings and powerful submersible lighting systems to pierce the crushing darkness. When the cinematic version of The Silent World premiered in 1956, it absolutely stunned global audiences and critics alike, offering a hypnotic window into a vibrant universe that felt almost extraterrestrial. It was an instant masterpiece of documentary filmmaking, ultimately winning the highly prestigious Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and subsequently taking home the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature in the United States. This monumental achievement catapulted Cousteau from a respected naval officer and inventor into a bona fide international celebrity, effectively making him the undisputed global ambassador of the oceans. People everywhere were suddenly fascinated by marine biology, and scuba diving rapidly transitioned from a niche scientific tool into a popular recreational sport, all because one man had the vision to bring the hidden depths up to the surface. While the world was still captivated by the mesmerizing imagery of his cinematic triumphs, Cousteau was already dreaming up his next impossible leap for mankind. If humans could visit the ocean floor for a few hours, why couldn't they stay there permanently? This audacious question birthed the Conself Project, a series of groundbreaking underwater habitats designed to test the limits of long-term human survival beneath the waves. In 1962, he launched Conself 1 off the coast of Marseille, where 2 divers affectionately dubbed oceanauts lived and worked, submerged for an entire week at a depth of 33 feet. They slept in a steel cylinder, breathed compressed air, and conducted scientific surveys of the local marine life without ever surfacing. It was a monumental success that proved the physiological and psychological viability of underwater colonization, but Cousteau immediately wanted to push deeper. The very next year, he deployed the much larger and more complex Conselv 2 in the Red Sea, an ambitious underwater village shaped like a futuristic starfish that housed half a dozen men for a full month. This wasn't just a survival test, it was a fully functional research station complete with a submarine garage, a biological laboratory, and even a deep water cabin situated nearly 100 feet down, where 2 men lived for a week, breathing a specialized mixture of helium and oxygen. The daily lives of these brave pioneers, enduring high humidity and the constant hum of life support systems, were captured in yet another Academy Award-winning documentary titled World Without Sun. Cousteau was essentially acting as the architect of a new human frontier, seriously proposing that future generations might build entire cities on the continental shelves, farming the seas and mining resources while living in perfect harmony with the aquatic environment. While his underwater habitats proved that humanity could survive beneath the waves, Cousteau realized that to truly protect the oceans, he needed to reach people in their own living rooms every single week. In 1966, he struck a monumental deal with American television networks to produce a documentary series that would define his legacy and captivate an entire generation. The undersea world of Jacques Cousteau premiered to astonishing ratings, bringing the mysteries of the deep to millions of viewers who had never even seen the ocean. For over a decade, families gathered around their television sets to watch the Calypso crew embark on thrilling adventures across the globe, from the icy waters of Antarctica to the vibrant coral reefs of the Caribbean. Cousteau himself became an instantly recognizable pop culture icon, always sporting his signature red beanie, which was actually a heartfelt tribute to the traditional headgear worn by the hard hat divers of the early 20th century. He narrated the series with a distinctive poetic French accent that added an air of romance and profound philosophy to every single episode. But as the Calypso travelled further and deeper, the tone of the show began to shift dramatically. Cousteau and his scientists started noticing disturbing changes in the pristine environments they had documented just a decade earlier. They found coral reefs choked by pollution, once thriving fish populations drastically reduced by commercial overfishing, and coastlines heavily damaged by reckless industrial development. The man who had spent his life unlocking the sea suddenly realized that his beloved silent world was in grave danger. This heartbreaking realization transformed him from a pure explorer into one of the most passionate and influential environmental advocates the world has ever known, setting the stage for a massive global conservation movement. Recognizing that television ratings and public awareness alone were not enough to halt the rapid destruction of the marine environment, the legendary captain took decisive action to turn his massive audience into an organized force for nature. In 1973, he established the Cousteau Society, a non-profit environmental organization dedicated to the protection of the ocean for present and future generations. The response was absolutely overwhelming, with hundreds of thousands of people around the globe quickly signing up to support his ambitious conservation campaigns and fund independent research. He firmly believed that people protect what they love, and they love what they understand, making education the absolute cornerstone of his entire environmental crusade. This newly formed society gave him the political leverage to speak directly to world leaders, transforming him into a formidable lobbyist who fiercely defended the natural world on the international stage. One of his most significant and enduring victories came when he turned his attention to the frozen frontier of Antarctica, a pristine wilderness that was suddenly facing the very real threat of international mining and aggressive commercial exploitation. Cousteau launched a massive global petition, mobilizing millions of children and adults alike to demand that the continent be preserved as a natural reserve dedicated entirely to peace and science. His passionate advocacy and undeniable scientific evidence played a crucial role in the eventual signing of the Madrid Protocol, a historic international agreement that strictly banned all mining activities in Antarctica for at least 50 years. This monumental triumph proved that a single voice, armed with a camera and a profound love for the planet, could effectively challenge powerful industrial interests and successfully safeguard the most vulnerable ecosystems on Earth. While the Aqua-Lung had revolutionized shallow water exploration, The restless inventor knew that scuba divers were still fundamentally limited to the upper layers of the sea, leaving the vast, crushing depths of the abyss completely out of reach. Driven by an insatiable curiosity to see what lay beyond the twilight zone, he collaborated once again with brilliant engineers to design a radical new type of submersible vehicle that looked like it had been pulled straight out of a science fiction novel. In 1959, the team unveiled the SP-350 Denise, affectionately known as the diving saucer, a highly maneuverable, flying, saucer-shaped mini-submarine capable of taking 2 men safely down to depths of over 1,000 feet. Unlike the bulky, tethered bathyscarfs of the era, the Denise was entirely self-propelled and equipped with robotic arms, allowing scientists to actively collect specimens and film the deep ocean floor with unprecedented agility. This incredible technological leap transformed the Calypso from a simple diving platform into a comprehensive deep-sea research vessel, opening up an entirely new vertical frontier for the crew. By this time, the mission had truly become a family affair, with his charismatic son Philippe stepping up as a primary cinematographer, expedition leader, and the natural heir to the oceanic legacy. Philippe shared his father's profound passion for the marine world, but brought his own unique flair and cinematic vision to their television specials, captivating a younger demographic of viewers. The dynamic father-son duo seemed virtually unstoppable, travelling to the most remote corners of the globe to document untouched marine sanctuaries and advocate for their protection, cementing their status as the ultimate guardians of the blue planet. However, the triumphant and unstoppable momentum of the Cousteau family was tragically derailed by an unimaginable loss that shook the captain to his very core. In 1979, while test flying a PBY Catalina seaplane over the Tagus River in Portugal for an upcoming expedition, a tragic aviation accident took the life of his beloved son and designated successor, Philippe. The sudden loss of the charismatic young explorer was a devastating blow, not only to Jacques, who fell into a profound period of mourning, but also to the millions of television viewers who had watched him grow into a passionate defender of the seas. For a time, it seemed as though the heart of the Calypso had stopped beating, and many wondered if the aging captain would simply retire from the public eye forever. But Cousteau knew that the mission was far too important to abandon, and the best way to honour Philippe's memory was to continue the vital work they had started together. To help shoulder the immense burden of leadership and production, his elder son Jean-Michel stepped into the spotlight, bringing his own expertise in architecture and environmental design to the forefront of the organisation. With renewed determination, the team decided to expand their focus beyond the saltwater oceans and look inland, recognising that the health of the sea is directly tied to the freshwater arteries that feed it. In 1982, they launched one of their most ambitious and physically demanding projects to date, a massive year-long expedition to chart the entire length of the Amazon River, navigating through dense, uncharted jungles and encountering isolated indigenous tribes. They documented the breathtaking biodiversity of the rainforest, while highlighting the alarming rates of deforestation and pollution that threatened the globe's largest watershed. This pivot to freshwater systems demonstrated a brilliant evolution in Cousteau's ecological philosophy, proving to the world that every drop of water on Earth is connected in a delicate global web of life. After the massive success of the Amazon expedition, the aging but relentlessly innovative captain realized that the world needed a powerful symbol of clean energy to combat the growing threat of fossil fuels. The beloved Calypso was a reliable workhorse, but her old diesel engines were polluting and increasingly expensive to operate during global energy crises. In 1985, Cousteau stunned the maritime world yet again by launching a revolutionary new vessel called the Alcyone, a sleek, futuristic ship that looked entirely different from anything else on the water. Instead of traditional canvas sails, the Alcyone was equipped with 2 massive computer-controlled metal cylinders known as turbo sails, which harnessed the wind using advanced aerodynamic principles originally developed for airplanes. This groundbreaking technology drastically reduced the ship's fuel consumption and served as a highly visible, floating billboard for renewable energy, proving that human ingenuity could find brilliant solutions to environmental problems. With the Alcyone leading the charge, the team expanded their global reach, launching an ambitious expedition to explore the mighty Mississippi River right in the heart of the United States. This journey was particularly eye-opening for his massive American audience, as the crew documented the severe impact of industrial runoff, agricultural pollution, and aggressive river engineering on one of the nation's most vital waterways. By turning his cameras on the environmental challenges facing the American homeland, Cousteau masterfully connected his global conservation message directly to the daily lives of his viewers, demonstrating that ecological issues weren't just happening in distant oceans or remote jungles, but right in their own backyards. The Mississippi expedition solidified his role not just as an explorer, but as a fearless global watchman who was unafraid to expose uncomfortable truths and challenge powerful industries to protect nature. As the 1990s approached, the legendary captain had fully transitioned from a brilliant oceanographer into a highly respected elder statesman of the planet, recognized by heads of state and royalty alike. His relentless campaigning culminated in his prominent appearance at the historic 1992 United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where he stood before the world's most powerful leaders as a fierce advocate for the global environment. He didn't just bring warnings of ecological disaster, he arrived armed with a visionary document titled The Bill of Rights for Future Generations, arguing passionately that our descendants have a fundamental right to inherit a healthy, uncontaminated Earth. This incredible initiative gathered millions of signatures globally, officially elevating environmental protection from a fringe scientific concern into a core human rights issue on the international stage. But even while rubbing shoulders with presidents and prime ministers, his restless soul always yearned to return to the sea, leading his crew to uncover some of the most spectacular submerged historical mysteries ever found. He fundamentally understood that the ocean is the world's largest museum, perfectly preserving the triumphs and tragedies of human history in its dark, icy depths. Long before underwater archaeology was a widely recognized field, his teams used their advanced sonar and submersible technology to locate legendary shipwrecks, including the astonishing discovery of the Britannic, the tragic sister ship of the Titanic that sank in the Aegean Sea during World War I. Exploring these silent, rusted giants offered a deeply haunting perspective on human hubris, contrasting the temporary nature of our greatest engineering marvels with the eternal, reclaiming power of the marine environment. By bringing these ghostly wrecks into the living rooms of millions, he masterfully proved that the ocean floor holds not just the future of our planet's biology, but the forgotten chapters of our own dramatic past. But the twilight years of the legendary explorer were marked by a heartbreaking tragedy that struck at the very symbol of his entire life's work. In January of 1996, the iconic Calypso, the sturdy wooden vessel that had served as the global floating headquarters for marine conservation for over 4 decades, met a devastating fate in the bustling harbour of Singapore. A massive commercial barge accidentally rammed into the beloved research ship, tearing a fatal hole in her wooden hull and causing her to sink into the murky waters in a matter of hours. The tragic news sent shockwaves around the world, as millions of fans who had grown up watching her proudly sail across their television screens mourned the loss of what felt like a dear, familiar friend. For the aging captain, now well into his mid-80s, watching his historic ship get pulled from the water days later, severely battered and bruised, was a deeply emotional blow that seemed to signal the inevitable end of a magnificent era of exploration. Yet, true to his incredibly resilient spirit, Cousteau refused to let the sinking of the Calypso sink his ultimate mission to protect the Blue Planet. He immediately began drafting ambitious plans and launching global fundraising campaigns to build an even more advanced, entirely environmentally friendly replacement vessel called the Calypso 2, driven by the unwavering belief that the vital work of ocean education must never stop. Even as his physical health slowly began to fail him, his brilliant mind remained incredibly sharp, focusing intently on finishing his final written testament to the world, a powerful and deeply philosophical book titled The Human, the Orchid, and the Octopus. In this profound parting gift, he meticulously laid out his ultimate vision for a sustainable future, passionately urging humanity to recognize the intricate, fragile connections between all living things, from the smallest delicate flower to the most intelligent creature in the deep sea. He knew his time was running out, but his message of hope and profound responsibility burned brighter than ever before, leaving a blueprint for survival for the generations that would follow. The final chapter of the captain's extraordinary physical journey came to a quiet close in the summer of 1997, sending a profound wave of sorrow across the entire globe. Jacques Cousteau passed away in Paris at the age of 87, leaving behind a monumental legacy that had forever altered the trajectory of human understanding. The outpouring of public respect was unprecedented for a marine explorer, proving just how deeply he had penetrated the hearts and minds of everyday people. In France, he was honoured almost like a head of state, with a massive, highly emotional farewell held at the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral, where thousands of admirers gathered, many donning his signature red knit cap in a poignant, silent tribute to their hero. But the global reaction extended far beyond his homeland, striking a particularly resonant chord in the United States, where multiple generations had literally grown up eating dinner while watching his spectacular underwater adventures on network television. For American audiences, he wasn't just a foreign scientist, he was the definitive voice of the ocean, a trusted grandfatherly figure who had introduced them to the delicate balance of aquatic ecosystems long before the word conservation became a mainstream political talking point. Major news outlets interrupted their regular broadcasts to announce his passing, and schools across the country held special educational lessons dedicated to his pioneering environmental work. Yet, even in the face of this immense loss, the Cousteau family and his dedicated global society knew that the most fitting way to honour his memory was not with a moment of silence, but with a renewed, roaring commitment to action. The torch of ocean advocacy was officially passed down to his heirs, including his granddaughter Celine and grandson Fabien, who were already preparing to carry his urgent message into the 21st century, using cutting-edge digital media and innovative marine research techniques that the old captain could have only dreamed of. One of the most profound and lasting impacts of the Cousteau legacy that extended far beyond his passing was the complete transformation of how humanity viewed apex predators and marine mammals. Before his revolutionary cameras brought the underwater world into living rooms across the United States, animals like sharks were widely considered mindless, menacing monsters of the deep, a terrifying myth perpetuated by centuries of sailor folklore and sensationalized media. Cousteau and his fearless team of divers were among the very first to systematically study these heavily misunderstood creatures in their natural habitats, without the use of protective cages, demonstrating to a captivated audience that sharks were actually cautious, highly evolved, and absolutely vital to maintaining the delicate balance of the ocean ecosystem. His groundbreaking documentary work completely shattered the deep-rooted fear that gripped the public imagination, replacing blind terror with a profound sense of respect and scientific curiosity. Similarly, his intimate, unprecedented encounters with wild dolphins and migrating whales revolutionized our global understanding of marine intelligence, capturing their complex family structures, incredibly playful behaviors, and highly sophisticated vocal communication methods on film for the very first time. He effectively showed the world that these magnificent marine mammals were not just vast resources to be hunted or entertaining exhibits to be captured, but highly sentient beings that shared our beautiful planet and deserved our utmost protection and empathy. This monumental historical shift in public perception directly paved the way for the establishment of massive marine sanctuaries and the implementation of strict international protections for heavily targeted species, inspiring a brand new, highly motivated generation of modern marine biologists who grew up watching the iconic Calypso crew interact peacefully with the gentle giants of the sea. The legendary captain essentially acted as a dedicated global translator, giving a powerful, undeniable voice to the voiceless creatures of the abyss, and fundamentally rewriting the entire narrative of human interaction with the wild, untamed ocean. Beyond the breathing apparatus that freed our bodies, the visionary captain knew he also had to free our eyes, recognizing that capturing the abyss required a complete revolution in photographic technology. In the early days, underwater cameras were massive, clumsy contraptions housed in heavy, custom-built metal boxes that were incredibly difficult to maneuver and highly prone to catastrophic leaks. Cousteau desperately wanted a compact, reliable tool that functioned seamlessly in the aquatic environment, teaming up with a brilliant Belgian engineer named Jean de Wouters to design something entirely unprecedented. Together, they engineered the Calypso FOT, a remarkably sleek, fully amphibious 35mm camera that was completely waterproof right out of the box, requiring absolutely no bulky external casing. It was an absolute game changer for marine biology and underwater exploration, featuring revolutionary seals and highly specialized lenses specifically calibrated to correct the optical distortion caused by water. This incredibly durable little device was so perfectly designed that a major Japanese optics company soon acquired the rights to mass produce it, famously rebranding it as the legendary Nikonos line of cameras. By putting this powerful, highly accessible visual tool into the hands of ordinary recreational divers, scientists and amateur photographers across the globe, Cousteau essentially democratized the visual documentation of the underwater realm. Suddenly, you didn't need to be a wealthy inventor or a heavily funded naval officer with a massive support crew to bring back breathtaking images from the coral reefs. Millions of everyday people were instantly empowered to become active, passionate ambassadors for the sea, returning from their weekend diving trips with stunning visual proof of the ocean's fragile beauty. This brilliant technological leap perfectly encapsulated his core philosophy that widespread human connection to the marine world was the absolute prerequisite for its ultimate salvation, effectively multiplying his own efforts by millions. Long before the global environmental movement gained mainstream political traction, the fearless captain was already putting his reputation on the line to stop catastrophic ecological disasters. In the autumn of 1960, the French government quietly hatched a controversial plan to dump massive quantities of radioactive nuclear waste directly into the Mediterranean Sea, right between the French Riviera and Corsica. The authorities assumed the deep ocean was simply a vast, bottomless trash can that would safely absorb the toxic material without consequences, a dangerously ignorant mindset common during the Cold War atomic age. But Cousteau, who knew the delicate biological web of the Mediterranean better than anyone, was absolutely horrified by this reckless proposal and launched a ferocious, highly publicized campaign to stop it. He didn't just write polite letters of protest. He actively mobilized his passionately loyal following of divers, scientists and everyday citizens to take direct action against the government train carrying the dangerous cargo. In an incredible display of public defiance, thousands of ordinary people physically occupied the train tracks, sitting down on the steel rails and creating an impassable human blockade that forced the transport to a grinding halt. The massive public outcry and the undeniable scientific evidence presented by the Calypso crew created such an intense political firestorm that the government was ultimately forced to completely abandon their disastrous plan, marking one of the very first major victories for direct marine conservation in modern history. This defining moment firmly established Cousteau not just as a gentle explorer making beautiful films, but as a fierce, uncompromising warrior for the sea who was unafraid to challenge the highest levels of power to protect the blue heart of our planet. While his political battles were reshaping global environmental policies, the heart of the captain always belonged to the thrill of pure geographical discovery, leading him to investigate one of the most striking natural anomalies on the entire planet. In 1971, the Calypso navigated to the pristine coastal waters of Central America, arriving at the Lighthouse Reef off the coast of Belize to solve a massive geological mystery. Before them lay the Great Blue Hole, an almost perfectly circular expanse of dark sapphire water stretching over 1,000 feet across, surrounded by shallow, vibrant turquoise coral. To the local fishermen, it was a place of deep superstition and navigational hazard, but to Cousteau, it was an irresistible invitation into the unknown. The crew eagerly deployed their scuba gear and submersible vehicles, descending into the pitch-black vertical shaft to uncover its ancient secrets. As they sank deeper into the abyss, their underwater floodlights illuminated an absolutely breathtaking sight, revealing massive, heavily angled limestone stalactites suspended from the cavern walls, some measuring up to 40 feet in length. This extraordinary discovery was the undeniable scientific proof that the entire subterranean cave system had actually formed on dry land tens of thousands of years ago, during the last major glacial period, long before rising sea levels eventually flooded the massive sinkhole. By broadcasting this incredible journey into the flooded cavern, Cousteau effectively transformed the Great Blue Hole from an obscure, feared navigational anomaly into one of the absolute premier scuba diving destinations in the entire world. More importantly, he powerfully demonstrated to his massive American audience that the ocean is not just a vibrant habitat for modern marine biology, but a perfectly preserved geological time capsule that holds the magnificent hidden history of the Earth's ever-changing climate. While his breathtaking discoveries and fierce political battles cemented his status as a legendary explorer, the captain's most enduring and profound gift to the world might just be his extraordinary ability to educate and inspire the youth, long before environmental science was a standard subject in elementary schools across the United States. Cousteau recognized that the long-term survival of the planet ultimately rested in the hands of the next generation. He dedicated a massive portion of his organization's resources to creating specialized educational materials, interactive magazines, and dedicated youth programs designed specifically to ignite a passionate curiosity about the natural world in young, impressionable minds. Through initiatives like the Cousteau Kids Network and various hands-on Summerfield study programs, he didn't just passively broadcast documentaries, he actively invited thousands of enthusiastic students to participate directly in the scientific process, teaching them the vital importance of ecological balance and sustainable living. This brilliant, highly intentional focus on youth education created a massive, incredibly powerful ripple effect throughout modern society, essentially planting the seeds for the modern environmental movement we see today. If you look closely at the leading marine biologists, passionate oceanographers, and dedicated climate activists working on the front lines of global conservation right now, an overwhelming majority of them will eagerly trace their initial spark of inspiration directly back to watching a thrilling Calypso documentary or eagerly reading a Cousteau Society magazine in their childhood bedrooms. He masterfully transformed the deeply complex, often intimidating science of marine ecology into an accessible, utterly fascinating adventure that made every single child feel like they too could be an explorer, fundamentally shifting the entire cultural paradigm from simply conquering nature to actively nurturing and understanding our fragile blue home. Even as his physical presence faded into history, the technological DNA of the legendary captain continues to pulse through the veins of every modern underwater mission conducted today. We see his restless spirit in the advanced, remotely operated vehicles that film the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench, and in the sophisticated saturation diving systems that allow commercial and scientific divers to live and work on the ocean floor for weeks at a time. The very concept of the citizen scientist, which is so vital to modern environmental monitoring and global climate research, was essentially pioneered by Cousteau when he encouraged millions of recreational divers to document and report the health of their local reefs. His early visionary experiments with underwater acoustics and long-range whale tracking paved the way for our current understanding of the complex sonic landscape of the deep, leading to international regulations that protect marine mammals from the deafening noise of industrial shipping and sonar. Today, every time a scientist uses a high-definition waterproof camera to capture a new species, or a conservationist uses social media to launch a global petition against plastic pollution, they're standing firmly on the broad shoulders of the man in the red beanie. He didn't just invent a breathing regulator, he invented a brand new way for our species to interact with the 70% of our planet that we had previously ignored or feared. This profound technological and cultural shift has made it impossible for us to ever return to a state of ignorance about the abyss, ensuring that the secrets he revealed remain at the forefront of our global consciousness. The legacy of the Calypso is no longer confined to a single wooden ship or a vintage television series. It has evolved into a living, breathing global movement of millions of people who are now the eyes and ears of the silent world. In the end, Jacques Cousteau was much more than an inventor, a filmmaker, or a sailor. He was the primary architect of our modern connection to the water planet. His journey reminds us that the greatest discovery isn't just finding a new species or a sunken treasure, but realizing that we are inextricably linked to the survival of the ocean itself. Today, his spirit lives on through the millions of scuba divers who glide through the kelp forests, the scientists who monitor the warming currents, and every person who chooses to protect our natural world. We have moved from a time of myths and monsters to a time of understanding and stewardship, all because one man had the courage to put on a mask and look beneath the surface. As we face the environmental challenges of the 21st century, the call of the Calypso remains louder and more urgent than ever, inviting us to be curious, to be brave, and to never stop exploring the blue heart of our home. The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever, and thanks to the legacy of the man who revealed its secrets, that wonder is now a gift shared by all of humanity. It is up to us to ensure that the silent world stays vibrant, healthy, and full of life for the next generation of explorers who are just now beginning to dream of the deep. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the life of a true legend, and remember that every time you look out at the horizon, there is an entire universe waiting just below the waves for you to discover.